It's been a week since we're here in the way of winter. Lots of blackouts grinding through unfriendly maps. But today, I'll finally get to use cheap silver bullet using an old shrapnel build that can dish out 100k and above DPS. We will be looking out the mods from the weapon down to our gears and the best calibration we need to achieve this. We will also be checking out the new Cradle modifications. Let me show you how. First, the weapon we'll check is the classic rifle Valor. The weapon calibration that we're going to use here is precision style with double crit rates. The higher crit rate, the better. We don't need rapid style in this case because we will compensate the fire rate in other ways later. The weapon mod we will use is Shatter Them All, Violent. So because we are a shrapnel user, we need all of the mods to be violent to maximize the crit damage attributes. Shatter 'em All mod gives you decent amount of shrapnel damage with 15% for each part up to 45%. Be mindful of substats as the ideal to have is crit damage, weapon damage, and damage against great ones. Let's jump to our gear mods. Remember, our calibration is not rapid style, therefore we have lesser fire rate. The one way we compensate for it is by using the momentum up mod. Of course, it should be violent. This would give us fire rate boost to plus 10% for the first 50% of the mag and weapon damage, of plus 30% for the next 50% of it. The ideal substats is again crit damage, weapon damage, and damage against great ones. If you can make it gold, the better, but for now I can only use the one I have. Next would be the targeted strike. This will literally boost our crit rate and crit damage with the aid of our secondary weapon, which is the wildfire pistol. Since wildfire will give us ability to mark the targets, then we will benefit from the core effect of this mod. As you can see, I only have 12% crit damage and 3.6% weapon damage. We can still find a better one in the future and get them both into max stats of 15% and 6% respectively. For the armor mod, we will be using Critical Rescue, because why not? We have maxed out the crit and weapon damage of it. The core effect also help us survive with plus 20% damage reduction and plus 20% healing received when HP is below 30%. That's no-brainer, right? For our pants, we will be using a bullet siphon because of its weapon damage bonus. This would give us a guaranteed 20% weapon damage on top of other attributes. And also as a shrapnel build, we wanted a higher weapon damage as this is multiplier to our shrapnel damage. The higher the better. Well, for our gloves, this is a bit tricky on my part. As I tested it in bosses, sometimes hitting a weak spot gives me a lot crit damage because of the first attribute effect in my crit boost mod resonance. If you don't have it, I suggest you get the violent one. And also, since I'm grinding a lot in maps, I consider having a good damage to normal enemies as well. You can play around with your own mod, but I really prefer crit boost over crit amp as crit boost will give additional crit rate for us. You test and see. Now for the last mod, I am using Covered Advance, and it is violent as well. Not lucky enough to have weapon damage here, but I can surely use a 15% crit damage plus a 20% weapon damage for 30 seconds when I'm not taking damage for 4 seconds. A good alternative here is obviously the slow and steady. Now for the basic gears, we need a gas-tight helmet to maximize our shrapnel damage, and for the most part, you will be having a 5-digit shrapnel damage out of it. And the other gears should be 4 pieces of Lone Wolves and 1 piece of Bastille, as you need an increased Lone Shadow stacks to 10, crit rate plus 8%, and weapon damage of plus 10% from it respectively. Finally, the new Cradle. Let's start with the Bounty Hunter. This override feature will give us plus 5% weapon damage again up to 30% since this will stack up to 6 for 8 seconds. Next would be the Tracking Bullet. Remember why I choose the Crit Boost Resonance as my gloves mod? Because this will complement the additional 25% shrapnel damage and plus 35% shrapnel crit damage given up to 10 stacks for 6 seconds. The trick is within here. This anti-phase is a mistake. I replaced it with Steady Hand since we are also using additional buff from the Axe's Fortress Warfare. This will complement for the weak spot damage plus 40% and weak spot damage to the bullseye plus 20%. Next one is the Anti-Void. This will give us additional 15% damage as we are using a rifle. This will also be useful when we try the MG4 Shrapnel weapon. And for the remaining Cradle Override, you can just copy this tactical combo: Deviation Master, Deadly Combo, and Fortress Link. That's the basic Cradle Override you need. For the most exciting part, let's see the damage and how it obliterates the bosses. The only food buff I'm using here is the canned meat. I'm having a hard time finding a sea bass, and to craft canned seafood in oil, that would give us additional fire rate boost and crit damage. Although just recently the canned seafood doesn't stack anymore with canned meat, maybe it's a bug or I don't know. If you know where to find it, please comment below. Thanks a lot. This build will give you high damage with or without hitting a weak spot. This is just so good indeed. For more videos, please see below, as I will be linking my Fast Gunner build from last season that is reaping a 50,000 damage per bullet, in which I'm planning to build here in the Way of Winter soon. Thank you for watching. Please also comment if you have suggestions or corrections to my build. And most important is, your like and subscribe. Let's help this channel grow, amigos. Thank you all. See you in my next video.